Hmm. Okay, well, if you need to do any preliminary, get your diaphragm all stretched out, now's the time to do it. All right. Welcome, my dear friends. It's great to see you. In case we haven't been introduced before, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people, which is exactly what we're going to do this episode because we're going to talk to an interesting person about role-playing games and quite a bit about movies. So dear friends, welcome new dear friend, Lou Heifer, aka Luau Lou. Lou's got his own gaming company, some innovative ideas of what to do in the world of role-playing games, insights into human nature that I think might impress some of you. He's a fun guy to game with, and apparently someone has entrusted him with the education of the youth. By the end of the video, I'll let you decide if that was a good idea or not. I've met and gamed with Lou at a couple role-playing game conventions now, and the more time I spent around him, I thought this guy's really interesting. I should interview him for the channel, and I'm glad that I did because he delivered the goods. I was looking for interesting conversation. That's exactly what he gave me. And apparently he has better work-life balance or project scheduling habits than I do because this interview took place before the episode of his show, This Old Dungeon, that he had me on to talk about the house on Griffin Hill, Ravenloft 2, which was a heck of a good time for me, as was this interview. So my dear friends, hope you enjoy getting to know Luau Lou. He's a man well worth knowing. Welcome, my dear friends. It's good to see you all again. And I want y'all to welcome to the show Luau Lou, new dear friend, that the first time I got to play with this guy was at a North Texas role-playing game convention. He was running West End Star Wars, which I had just dipped my toes into in my home group recently. And I thought, I want to see more of this stuff. And we had a good time. And we just saw each other in passing for the rest of that con. But at the 2024 North Texas con, he was running a game under development involving B movies where I could possibly play a small Italian child who's become friends with a brand neutral Godzilla who's going to go fight Frankenstein. And frankly, that's kind of a dream role. And unfortunately, I had a little too much at the con whiskey tasting contest where I just did. Lou, I want to start off with apologizing for not giving you the best performance I possibly could. But then I saw him some more around the con. We played together some more. And I thought, this dude's so interesting. I just want to talk to him some more. And he was gracious enough to accept. So everybody, welcome Luau Lou.
Stephen, thank you for having me on, man. It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure playing with you the couple times I've gotten a chance to there at the con. And for folks listening, if you have not been, that con is like a friend maker, a trend maker. It is everything in all things as far as role-playing conventions go to me, anyhow. I look forward to it every year above anything else in this hobby.
Yeah, and each year since I've gotten into role-playing game conventions, I've come up with a pattern of I'm going to go to North Texas, and then I'll probably wind in another con somewhere in there. That con may change, but the North Texas is going to stay. And if you want to meet designers, if you want to bounce ideas off of other people trying to do innovative things, high quality players who can give you good feedback, North Texas is the place to go. And so Lou here is a game designer, amongst other things. And I wanted to talk to him more about his games and just him in general, because he's a very interesting dude. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts he's been interviewed on. And so we're not going to try to retread that same ground here. We're going to try to add to, so we can expand the known lore of the Louiverse, as it were.
Mask is coming off tonight, folks.
And so I want to start off with a part that, now this one might have been covered in a previous podcast, but I think I got some different people watching this and who might not have seen the other ones. Luau Lou, you live in Indiana, not a state known for its luau's. Did you spend a lot of time in Hawaii? Were you in fact accidentally almost luau'd yourself? Why Luau Lou the name?
Why Luau Lou? Well, so long story short, my day job is teaching, and I've been doing that for 25 years. And the first year that I taught, I happened to be going through, I think it was a Walmart, and they had these Hawaiian shirts discounted from the summer. This is August when you're going back to school. I was like, that's kind of cool. I haven't, worn a Hawaiian shirt since, like late 80s, Crockett and Tubbs, in Miami Vice era. I'm going to buy one of those and wear it. So I did. And it just kind of became a tradition. Every year I'd try to hunt out, find a new Hawaiian shirt and buy it. I also have got hip dysplasia. So when I walk, if you haven't seen me, folks, I kind of do this thing like this. People would see me going down the hallway in my Hawaiian shirts after a few years, and it'd be like, "Hey, Luau Lou," and that just kind of became a thing. And so I've kind of put that as my internet personality or whatever for gaming, to make a brand or whatever, to give people a way to just connect with me and feel comfortable coming up and talk to me, kind of remember my name. Yeah, not the greatest story, but that's the story.
Okay, but I can relate to that because when I was a teenager and also shopping around at Walmart, I saw a trucker hat that said "World's Greatest Granddad" on it. I wasn't anybody's dad, let alone granddad. So I thought for a conversation piece, that was worth $5. And it was actually a good hat. It lasted me a good long while, but I don't go around as Granddad Steve. Not everybody's monikers last. They don't stand the test of time. And here I was thinking that you just had an extraordinary sense of rhythm and beats, and you were just radiating it out to everybody, giving the vibe to the North Texas folks. Okay, I got you. Well, I appreciate that insight. So, game designer, you've got the Dandyline Games brand, and I see where you work with some other organizations as well. What's going on? What is your corporate entity? What is the brand you do, and what is its relations to other game companies?
Sure. So actually, this is my second time trying to get my dance card punched. Back in 2000, I ran a company called Wholesome Entertainment. My goal was to make all sorts of games, board games, and all this. But role-playing games is a really low-dollar entry point into the gaming market. As far as, you're just publishing books, which are fairly cheap to do, respectively. Back then, we were just starting to get this whole print on demand thing going. There was no drive-through RPG, no Kickstarter, and I struggled with that for 5 years, I want to say, and then finally said that in the interest of my own family, I can't keep throwing money into this. It would take too much more money to get it to a level to be self-populating, or whatever you want to call that. And so I closed shop then. COVID hit, and I'd still been writing games. I've been writing games all my life. I grew up in the Satanic Panic era, and I know this is kind of retreading some stories people probably heard, but couldn't get D&D into my house. It was forbade. So I tried to invent what I thought D&D was, and went through a lot of different iterations before finally my parents realized it wasn't the thing that TV was saying it was, and allowed me to play. So I've been interested in making games, trying different rules, trying to simulate this, that, and the other thing. So I'd always been making games, even when I shut down the shop. And I had a game, the Derelict Club game is what it ended up being called. It's about youth out on misadventures, sort of the Goonies scenario. I've been working on that, really interested in it, having a lot of fun test playing it just within my private gaming group. COVID hit, and I'm like, you know what? I've got time. I've got money now that I'm older and established, and there's all this new stuff out there. I'm going to give this a run. That started the whole Dandyline Games part of the business. And Dandelion, so I grew up on a goat farm here in Indiana. And my father's herd name was Dandelion Goats. Dandelion, not spelled like the flower, but dandelion because of the genetic lines and that sort of thing. So he passed away, and I kind of adopted that as my new company name, kind of in honor of him, and then also in the respect that I hope to produce a long line of fun and interesting games.
And I noticed that Dandyline Games are available for sale through websites, not just yours, like Goodman Games has it up there. Do you have some sort of relationship with Goodman Games?
Yeah, so Goodman, if anybody's out there and doesn't know it, Goodman Games is bar none the best industry representative as far as trying to get new writers and new people into the industry. They have a third-party license agreement that is basically you show them what you want to do, and as long as it's not offensive, they okay it, and you can use their IP, their rules, and make the adventure rule set, whatever that you want. And they will even promote it, and most of the time will even buy copies to have at their online store. They're just phenomenal, and they'll give you any support you need as far as like getting logo graphics and stuff like that. So yeah, I've produced now 10 things that are actually out there available on their store that I've produced with a slew of things coming down the line here. And there's other companies I've worked with as far as doing little bits of writing for product development. Right now I'm doing some stuff with Frog God Games, Levi Combs, who does Planet X Games. And I wanted to defend him a minute. On one of your episodes, you were going through people that went out for a pack of smokes, and he was on that list. I'm sure things could have been handled better, but I do want to defend him. A guy had an aneurysm and had to have surgery, and tried to go to a con shortly before North Texas, and it just didn't work out. He still had a lot of issues trying to like remember things and be where he's supposed to be and figure things out. And so he was like, look, this isn't gonna be fun for anybody if I'm trying to game master. So he wasn't trying to leave you high and dry, but I guess things didn't get communicated or something. I don't know. But anyhow, I've worked for his company writing some things. I've done some things with Jeffrey Jones, who does RPG Ramblings, kind of behind the scenes things a little bit. We've kicked back a couple ideas and done some little like preemptive writing on some stuff. Rugby Melee Games, who produced Hell Train, and it's basically a DCC game where you play as the monsters. I've done some writing for them. So just little companies here and there. Most of the time it's, individuals like me just trading work back and forth to help each other.
Little companies. You mentioned Goodman Games and Frog God Games. As far as independent role-playing game publishers go, they're pretty impressive folks with an impressive cast of employees that do the direction for the art, the writing, the creation, the brainstorming, innovating. So I don't know, man. I don't think they're just little people.
Yeah,
I mean, compared
those
to
guys,
Hasbro,
you're right.
sure.
They're well established, and
But you're working with some creative titans there. That's cool. Now, how did you get to do that?
Field of dreams, man. You build it, they'll come, that sort of thing. I this second time around just started writing things and talked to people, showed them what I was doing, talked about what I was interested in doing, and like the Frog God thing. That project that they're doing was a project I wanted to do, and I can't talk much about it, but the scope of it was such that I knew that it would be several years before my company had the fan base to be able to make this product, because the numbers you would have to publish it at to make it profitable. But they already had that, I knew. So I was talking with one of them saying, hey, this is kind of what I was thinking of doing. And they're like, hey, we've actually been throwing that around in-house for quite a while. And so they invited me in to be part of the project, kind of take a little bit of a leadership role in some of that. With Planet X, Levi oftentimes will throw out some of the things he's getting ready to work on. And he was going to work on this robots and ray guns, or it could be ray guns and robots. I always forget which comes first. But there's a little zine, sci-fi kind of system agnostic zine. I heard he was doing that, and so I wrote up a piece that said, hey, if you want an article for the zine, I got this little adventure. And he's like, oh, sure, man. So yeah, just getting yourself out there, I guess, is all it's about.
Were those relationships developed by meeting these people at role-playing game conventions or through some other venue?
Almost exclusively North Texas. I mean, since then, I've made a lot of friends in other conventions, but primarily, if you're interested in the industry, especially small publishers, North Texas is just this like nexus where a lot of us go and trade tips and give off leads for artists and editors and things. Gamehole Con's another one that's pretty centralized for small publishing. I've heard that Total Con and the new one, Page in Philadelphia, are also similar.
Yeah, and it was that Total Con that Levi no-showed at. And thank you for adding that context, because I didn't know what happened to him.
Like I said, I mean, there probably could have been better communication somewhere along the board. I don't know on his end or someone else's, but yeah.
Bouncing off of that communications, one thing that I've noticed with small businesses of any variety is that organizational and administrative management is often very lacking. Like if you were to take a look at a contractor, like an electrician, plumber, whatever, if they had someone who could make a reasonable schedule for them, and then they actually kept to that schedule, that contractor will conquer the world. Yeah. Graphic artists, same thing. Like me and some friends, we've tried to hire artists before, living artists, and give them money. They'll say, yeah, I'm interested, then disappear into the ether. But if they could show up to get the money, then they could get the money. So as a small label, what are some of the problems y'all encounter? Is it the fact that you're a one-man band? And so if you're not available to do something, to send out a notice that, hey, I'm not going to be here because something really awful happened to me. What's it like?
I really think you hit the nail on the head there. There is no employee that's permanent other than myself. Everything else is just done work for hire. And to make something profitable in the RPG industry, because it is such a cottage industry, you really have to do 95% of the stuff yourself and only hire out that 5%, or you'll just go under, period. So yeah, it's trying to wear all the hats. And when you do that, you're never going to wear any of them perfectly, right? So I think that's a big part of it. I think also, in a way, to be a small publisher, you have to be flexible, and you have to realize that as you're setting out one direction, it may not be worth your while to continue down that path at this time. It might be better to jump stream. That can look bad on the outside. It can look to people like, oh, he's all over the place, he's never going to get anywhere. But on the inside, there's oftentimes critical things that require you to do that. Case in point, like I've got one product that I mentioned to some of the fans, I think it was 2 years ago. It's not come out. It probably won't come out for, almost another year, because the pieces to make that happen and the return on investment don't work for me right now. I've got to get other products that I know are going to be more successful out first and use their funding to put together the final pieces of that, lest I put that out and nothing else ever again. So So yeah, it can be a nightmare, man. It's as much fun as it is to write games and to go to conventions and meet people and play games and see what other people are doing. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice involved in that.
And you touched on something that I want to expound upon, is that the RPG hobby, it's a lot of one-man band operations going on with a little bit of contract work going on out there. And that's something that I think that folks on the inside of the RPG hobby lose track of, that we are tiny fish in a very big pond. And even Hasbro, with their most profitable year of D&D ever, in the grand scheme of big businesses, isn't that much.
Yeah.
When I was talking to Bill Webb at TotalCon, the owner of Frog Guy Games,
Yeah.
he said that, yeah, I've made $1 million off of this company. I said, well, that's pretty good. And he said, well, that was over 20 years. And he's doing it about as well as I think you can do it.
Yes, at this level, that's the
And
dream.
he's been in it forever. He's very accomplished himself. He's got a great team around him. And over 20 years, that's how much he's made off of it. So for prospective creators out there, I guess this is a gut check question. What are you in this for? Are you in it
Yeah.
because you love it, or are you in it to make money? If you want money, you're probably better off on OnlyFans. Somebody will probably like whatever niche you're
Some
doing.
of us. I don't know about all of us.
You might be uncomfortable with the audience that would want to pay you money, but they probably would pay you money. So what reason are you in it for, Lou?
If you ask any small publisher and they don't start by saying, oh, it's vanity to see my own stuff in print, they're lying to your face. Because that is the most thrilling thing as far as this hobby goes that I've ever experienced, is getting to the printers and opening that box and getting that work that is your brain's little activity come to life and available to feel and touch and look at. So yeah, I think that's number one. Is it's a real big payoff to be able to have an idea and take it all the way to fruition. But then also, I think the second thing, and it's a very close second, is meeting people and interacting with people and having that product or whatever it is be a bridge to create a new friendship and to spur other people on. I mean, there's so many people, like Levi and Jeff and Ben Burns and Bill Barsh and all these guys. They were doing it before I was. They befriended me, talked with them. Now they're my friends and they're helping me do it. And now there's people that come to me and I help them. And that synergy is just a very warm feeling there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't dare take away any merit from that, because I've got people like that too, like Chris Clark of Inner City Games. Great dude. He was my first recorded interview and we keep in touch. He's just a fascinating guy.
Yeah. Can't get real OG more than him nowadays. I mean, there's only a few others.
Not many. And like Larry Wickman, the publisher of Shuffling Horror.
And now I talk with him. It's all because of you, because you got me to sit down and play his game. It's awesome.
Yeah, and he's fantastic. He's really funny, and I just look forward to any time I get to hang out with or chat with him. We email every few months, and it's always good to hear back from him. And I'm the kind of person that his games would be aimed at. And so he's interested to hear what I have to say about how he fine-tunes some of the things in the games. And I think it's not coming out this year, maybe next year. It's another one of those things that production schedules aren't always what you want them to be. But me in a red mankini inspired him to write a game based on Zardoz.
Oh,
and
nice.
Yeah, because I dressed up as Zed from Zardoz for Gary Con 2019 on a kind of a dare. And he took one look at that and thought, yeah, I want to make an RPG for that. But this is so much fun. The value we get out of these relationships makes it worth it by itself.
Very much so.
But if you're trying to pay the bills with it, things get tough. And I can relate to what you're saying about the vanity of it, because I'm a short story writer and novelist, and the amount of money that I get off that is not enough to power the bulb that's behind the screen right here. But I enjoy the work. And some people enjoy what I did. And that's the cool part. That's the best part right there. And I get to tell interesting stories that I don't think other people have told. So yeah, it's that kind of personal validation, get your own creative vision out there and hoping that it lands and creates some sort of connection with another person. I think that's what the most important part is.
That's it.
Thank you, Lou. And see, we're not even that far into this interview, but Lou has already pinged on several pretty key points that, having listened to his other interviews and then just so far in this one, I think this might be the smartest man in the RPG hobby right now. But he's so humble and like kind and low key, you wouldn't think of it. Like, I'm an arrogant jerk. I might come across like I know everything,
Right.
but this guy might actually know everything. He's just being cool. What do you say to that accusation, Mr. Luau Lou? Are you
I
the smartest
say,
man in the RPG
folks,
hobby?
if you've met me, you're gonna think this guy's crazy. He's out of his mind crazy. We're new friends, Stephen. Give us another couple conventions. You'll come back and be like, "Oh, folks, that episode, whatever this is, just strike all that. We'll delete it off the inner spheres here."
But you've clearly learned some things. And now, do you have an end goal here? Is it that Dandyline Games stands on its own and all of your work goes through it? Or do you want to do your own thing, plus take advantage of working with others as the opportunity presents itself?
I kind of think the latter. I don't have any desire to sell things off. I mean, I don't really have any IPs that are worth much or that I think would be worth much. And even if they were, I've kind of said online so much as that, like the stuff that is truly mine, like the Dare Luck Club, I'm up to anybody writing for that wants to. They just let me know you're doing it and make sure it's not something that's X-rated or whatever, because it's sort of supposed to be a PG-13-ish game or G or whatever. The thing I'd really like to do is continue to have enough success to try more game systems, because that's the thing that people don't really understand is if you write for something that's established and popular, you're probably going to do okay. There's probably somewhat of a guarantee you will make your money back if you have half a sense about you. But if you write your own stuff, if you make a new system, a new rule book, that's hard territory to go, because you're looking at multiple years of feet hitting the pavement out there running the game for people before it'll catch on enough to where it pays for itself. And I wrote Their Luck Club in 2015, I think, is when the final manuscript was done. And just here recently has it gotten to where I can publish something on it and it'll pay for itself. And that's without having professional editing, which is now the next step. Is, am I doing well enough now that I can not only print this, but have it edited before it's printed? Because I do all that with my other stuff, because it pays for that. This brand doesn't, because it's not popular enough yet. So down the road, I've got like 4 or 5. In fact, one of your episodes, I can't remember what it was, but you brought up the Y files. I think it was on one of your episodes. Maybe it was on one of your Facebook posts, but I'd never watched that. And I had this pretty cool mechanic for a game that's set in a somewhat realistic setting. But I was like, what am I going to do with that? And then after watching a bunch of the Y files and listening to them, I'm like, tinfoil hats. This is the game. Tinfoil hats. You play these people that are being tracked down by different agencies and all this, and all of these conspiracy theories are true. And so I've got that in development, but I'm going to have to really pump a lot of money into that to make it to where when it hits the ground, it's going to be something, that'll sustain. So that's the goal, is to make enough on this to keep going and come out with new stuff that's my own thing and not just writing someone else's pigtail or coattails there, or pigtails, whatever they got, ponytail, pigtail.
Writing someone's pigtails would be a little more complex, but if you're agile enough, I imagine it'll work. So you've got in existence the Dare Luck Club line. I see you've got material for DCC and MCC. What all lines do you have?
So you got all the Dare Luck Club stuff. For MCC, I've got a monster book that's probably my most popular MCC, DCC thing, the Natural Selections. It's designed to be kind of like the old Monsters Compendium. Only I solved a couple of problems that book had. Is, in that book, they published on both sides of the page, and then you couldn't alphabetize things. And this one, it's a smaller size. So every monster is exactly one page front and back, so you can keep alphabetizing them, and it takes up less space on the table. I just came out with a series. We kind of experimenting. I wanted to do pamphlet adventures. My problem is I can't write that small. I overwrite everything, and then I truncate it down into something a little more manageable. But even then, I couldn't get the adventures I wanted to be small enough and have the art that I wanted and the maps that I wanted and fit on a pamphlet. So I was like, well, what do I do with these? So I came up with this idea of, old D&D modules used to have like the trifold screens on them, the covers. And so I decided, that'd kind of make a neat shape for a module. Let's try that. And it does work pretty well. It makes it pretty handy to just flip back and forth and find what you need as you're running the game. So I just released a new set of those. And one of the things I got a chance to do is David Beatty let me write one for Weird Frontiers, because I'm kind of a big Western fan too. So I got to do that this time around. And that's pretty much it right now. I think I might start trying some OSE product line, but I don't know. I mean, it's so close to DCC. It's kind of like, I don't know if it's better to stick in one brand or to branch out.
It's a good question. And now that last one that you were talking about, your DM screen adventures. Thank you for letting me take a look at the What Lies Beneath Grazagor Mountain.
Yeah.
And That was really cool. That was really good. And if you don't mind, I got some thoughts to
Please.
add on that. It's that I found the format of everything having to go on one screen, front and back.
Yeah, 6 panels. Yep.
It looked to me like the limitations of the format bred creativity in that you had to do what you were talking about. You had to have enough room to tell the story you wanted to tell, but you didn't have so much room you could start bloating things up and getting lazy and sloppy with your wording. The writing is tight, it is good, and every room is memorable. It's action, action, danger, peril at every turn. It was really good. And tell me if this is the case, as I imagine it is, that having that limited footprint to work with put the pressure on to make every section count. And pressure creates diamonds. That's how
Yes, it
that
does.
works. And yes, I just likened your module to a diamond because it's
I mean,
legit.
from you, that's really great praise. And I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but I've gone back and I've listened to every review that you've done of modules in RPG material. On my podcast that I do with Bill Barsh and Edwin Nagy, This Old Dungeon, that's kind of what we do is we take an old module and we go through it, kind of pick it apart and then redesign it for how we would want to play it nowadays. So it thrills me to see someone in that space and see how you do it. And you do such a more thorough line of looking at it from like an editorial standpoint. I've picked up a lot of pointers from how you were going through this last one as far as where stuff should be and why you don't need to say certain things and do need to say other things. So from you, man, that's great praise. I really appreciate that. Yeah. One of the things, I talked about changing lanes. The ones that I just did actually weren't on my publishing schedule until actually this next spring, but I decided to bring them forwards and put off some other projects because I feel like every time I do a set of these, I get a little bit better at writing from that same standpoint. What really matters here? What does the game master need from me and what's better left for him or her to just wing on their own and go off in their own direction with?
I think you did very well. And I appreciate that you've watched a number of my episodes and you got something out of it too. That's great. And sometimes I wonder if to the observer, is this guy just flailing away at this dead horse and he should move on, but I can't stop myself from doing it? And my program observer says, no, it was legit. You were good.
Yeah, no, you make a cognizant point every time you're saying something. Like you don't ever just repeat yourself, which sometimes happens on our program, and you give a reason why. Oh, it's terrible that they put this in. No, you like go through why. What would be better there, why it doesn't belong there is very, very informative. I would say, even with 10-foot pole and all these other programs that are in this space, I would say that you've got, I'm not just saying this because I'm here, folks. I would say if I was on somebody else's program as well, you probably have the most organized and pointed reviews of any modules that I've ever come across.
Well, thank you. That's what I was going for because I've got a master's degree in political science. So I had to get knocked around mentally and in the way I word things by the PhDs that were running my master's thesis board, because I think they gave me their first round of feedback on a Christmas day and just ruined my Christmas day. Just wrecked the thing because they just shat all over what I had given them so far. And then in the Army, they have all kinds of formats that you have to follow and you got to get to the friggin' point. And in my short story work, I've had editors from publishers that just beat me about the neck and ears. And so I know what I'm looking for. And I know, to the untrained writer, it might not seem like some of these things matter, but they do. Mm-hmm. And why they do is if you're looking at it from the customer perspective, the person enjoying this product, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to come across pretty quickly. Yeah. Because there's a certain level of polish, even in today's rather sad journalistic standards, that you should have. And the DM Screen Adventure totally did. I do have one question about that, though. Yeah. Are the players intended to be able to see the outside part of the screen?
It's not really intended to stand upright like a screen. That's the easiest way to explain to people what it looks like is, it looks like a DM screen. Okay. But yeah, no, I mean, the players I play with, we're all pretty good about trying to be in game and all that. So I wouldn't shy away from doing that, but there's no real need to. It doesn't, unfortunately, being able to lay it out with that much material in that limited space, you can't really make it to where, here's the player stuff on this face and here's the DM stuff on this face. It's just all too tight to do that.
So it's really intended more of like a placemat that say the DM would put down in front of themselves flat on the table and then run off that. When you're ready for the next side, you just flip it over and then you run off that.
Yeah,
Okay.
or maybe a screen inside a screen.
Green
But
Inception. I
that's
like it.
normally I have mine laying flat when I'm running these at conventions, and I just flip it over as I need stuff on the back. There's things about it I really like. I do find it easy to run an adventure off of these just because there's not that many spaces for something to be. So it's pretty easy to find something, whatever it might be. Oh, I need that random encounter chart. You only got 6 places to look.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I will say that there are things about it that are not as conducive as I'd like them to be. For example, on most of them, not the one that I sent you, but on most of them, all the map is centralized to one spot. That can be cumbersome if you have to flip to look, okay, area 2, area 3, stuff like that. But it's still, I mean, you're going to have that with an RPG book to some extent, unless you have a detachable screen. Normally for like the Kickstarters, I always send everybody digital versions of the map that they can use for VTTs or print out or what have you.
See, I was thinking that you had mastered the idea that I try to implement in my writings and in my editing. Everything is guided by the principle of what does the audience need to know and when do they need to know it? And you give it to them as they need it. And the screen adventure that you let me look at hit that perfect because you had all the description, whatever monsters, whatever traps, here's the map that goes with it. And all the text around it goes with that map. So it was a very elegant design.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing with that one is because the rooms are kind of set up as challenges, the map, when you compile them together, all they really are stacked separate maps anyhow. So if you look on the Kickstarter page, the first version I did of it, I did have them all stacked together, but then I was like, no, there's no point in that. And it works better if they're next to their descriptions. So I may in the future go down that road. Some of the maps though, like the Atropic Hill one, which is one that came out with that one, has this big landfill with tunnels going through it and stuff. And it looks good as one solid piece. And I didn't want to lose that aesthetic because that's another thing is I like to make these the art and color and stuff that's supposed to be pleasing on their own.
And from a DM's perspective of, someone running the game, this really reminded me of the super easy to run setup of the adventures in the D&D Black Box. If you remember that edition for basic D&D, which I've played the Zanzer's dungeon that came in it at least a dozen times and hope to run it another dozen times where I die.
There are many people, and I think I'm maybe one of them that claim that that's probably the best, cleanest published version of basic ever made. And I think the line that came off that, I always get it wrong. It sounds like it's an amusement park. Thunder Rift, I think is what the line was from it. Same thing. And they did kind of that map thing that you were just talking about where they had like the map and they had the rooms on little lines coming off the map or whatever. Yeah, it's very well designed.
So you're standing in pretty rarefied but very good company, my friend.
I got here accidentally, though, is the only difference. But hey, I'll take it.
Were you inspired by them, or did you come up with this just completely separate?
I was aware of them, but again, I didn't have any conscious decision to try to make it like that. It's just at the time, after playing around with it, it made better sense to go that direction. Did you get a chance to meet Ian McCarty? Did you get a chance to meet him at North Texas?
I have not met him.
It's one of the independent publisher guys. Him and Rocky Gardner, they publish Fantastic Geographic, and their label is Silver Boulet.
Pronounced correctly too. Tim Kask won't give you a dressing down.
No, talk to the man. I won't make that mistake again. They also make individual adventures, and that's something Ian's kind of done about a year and a half ago. He switched to where all his maps, they come as a whole map in the back of the book, but throughout the book, he sectioned off each piece that goes with the write-up as you go through the book, and it's a really handy thing.
Yeah, that is. For the guy who's running the module, they got enough work to do. If you can make it easier for them to do it, they have to appreciate that. Oh, that's good stuff, man.
This particular issue, I'm going to pimp this issue for him.
Go for it.
This is issue 3. It's about a year and a half old. This is like quintessential Game Master material right here because it's the issue on riddles and codes and any sort of like dungeon, not traps necessarily, but things that challenge the player's minds to get through the dungeon. And it's just really, really extensive. All the different ciphers they list in here that are like actual real world ciphers. And then they talk about like how to drop hints to allow a player to stumble upon how to solve it. It's really nice, really well done. And there's an adventure in there where it's like a ruined library that uses some of the codes and stuff.
We'll have a link to that in the description below if anybody's interested, check it out. Are copies still available for sale?
I think so, yeah. I think they've, if I remember right, they have their stuff on drive-through, I believe. So.
Oh, perfect. That makes it easy. We've talked about how you've written for different systems, your Dare Luck Club, DCC, MCC, others. Is there one that you prefer writing for? Like, is there one that you think's better overall than the others? And
Hmm.
feel free to plug yourself if it's true.
Yeah. So if you ask me, like, if you had to just write for one game for the rest of eternity, I would say I'm done with this and I walk away. But the one I really enjoy writing for right now is probably my system, the Dare Luck Club, just because it really has like everything in the kitchen sink on the table. It deals in a world that we're all familiar with. We're all familiar with being little shithead kids that get themselves in trouble and go off on adventures and overthink things and all this jazz. So it's really fun to play in that space. It also mostly takes place in the 70s and 80s, which is fun for me to kind of revisit and take a little nugget of a memory and expand upon it into something a little more wild. So there's that. And then second to that would be MCC, kind of for the same reasons, because it's post-apocalyptic. It's got some fantasy elements you can, kind of tweak up on. It's got, the sci-fi. It's got primitive world that littered with high-tech stuff that's left over from a forgotten age. Just you can put everything in there, and that's what I like about it.
Good deal. Now, do you mess with any of the Dungeons and Dragons systems at this point, or are you completely in on these alternate systems?
You mean as far as like playing them?
Writing
Either.
for them.
I did, let's say it was like maybe 2001. I wrote an adventure thinking I would put it out as a generic Dungeons and Dragons adventure. I got the manuscript finished, but never got it any further into development. It was fun to write. I can't remember what it ended up being called. It was like the waking of the Grand Wizard something. But basically, you've got these remains of a wizard locked in a life-covered coffin, and his last will and testament is to be buried at these ruins in this swamp that are like 3 days journey. And his nephew, who's inherited everything, doesn't feel up to the challenge, so he's just paying you buco bucks to go do this. And you're going through like war-torn areas, and you got to try to protect the coffin and all this. It's kind of fun, but just never got around to finishing that out. And then about the time that I was writing, that's when I started getting into DCC. And now I'm just so much more comfortable with that system. And then OSE also. I would probably convert it to one of those if I was going back to mess with it.
Okay, I got you. Now, I do believe you just very briefly went past the first role-playing game that you came up with, and you told me a little bit about it at North Texas.
So this is the thing, Century's Edge.
All
Okay.
right.
It's
a beefy boy.
Yeah, 428 pages plus a couple maps.
That's a lot.
And that's the first one I tried to publish. There were ones before that I wrote, but I still like this one. I still think I'll come back to this one someday and redo it. The thing I like about it is its mechanic I haven't seen elsewhere, and it was kind of fun. It's kind of a class-based system a bit. You have 10
Let's step back for a second.
Yeah.
And for the folks who weren't in on that conversation, what is that role-playing game called, and what's it about?
Sure. So Century's Edge is a Victorian era role-playing game that's set in a world. The premise is that H.G. Wells's time experiment happened and it fractured time. And now there's all these different bubbles of continuity on Earth that they keep kind of like repeating themselves or kind of locked in to where like technology can't advance past a certain point for that area. And I mean, it's very League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It brings in all the literature from the Victorian era and plants it on the planet. It lets you kind of create a character that kind of can intermingle through that, because you can go from one bubble to the next. There's like charts that you roll on to see what happens. So if you're carrying like let's say for what you had a really terrible game master and they let you have, a Gatling gun, and you walk from that bubble into one that happens to be primitive, like maybe the Lost World there on the Amazon plateau. You roll and see, and maybe that Gatling gun survives the changeover, but oftentimes it'll like regress, or else it'll become its elemental pieces or whatever. It'll start to fall apart into just, non-working pieces of metal and wood and whatnot. There's different things on the chart, different effects. But that's kind of the premise. Is the idea is to get some just real exploration, high adventure, heart of darkness kind of stuff, but then be able to do like the Gothic stuff, the Dracula and Frankenstein and all that, and all the Verne stuff, Journey to the Center of the Earth and all that, Robert the Conqueror and all this. It's just like trying to get all those books, because I really like that era of writing. It's one of my favorite. Those are kind of my favorite novels and stuff to read. Is all that stuff. The even getting up into the turn of the century, with Tarzan and all that.
So that limited pockets of high society of the era, but the world had not yet been fully mapped out. There were still plenty of unknowns. There is adventure and danger to be had. And so a very grimdark way of looking at it would be Solomon Kane, but a more whimsical look at it would be like Castle Falkenstein.
Yes.
And so where would you fall in that spectrum of Castle Falkenstein to Solomon Kane?
I kind of like to deviate between the two. In fact, one of the parts of the book is in the Game Master section. It basically says that, look, you can have like three different takes. You can have the realistic take where everything that, is going to happen in this adventure could really happen in real life. You could have the incredible take where most of it's 100% believable, and then there's that one or two elements that's like a surprise kind of thing. Or you could have the fantastic. And one of the reasons it's so big is it did have three starting adventures, one of each kind in there. The realistic one was to play on the Phantom of the Opera, where there's this ghost haunting a theater, and it turns out that it's this person trying to get revenge, and there's, murder mystery plot.
Oh,
and
don't spoil the adventures. Someone might find a copy somewhere and want to play
it. So I stole from good old Tracy Hickman on that, and I made it so that every time you play it, it's one of four different people, and it changes each time, and there's different clues that lead different ways. But
steal from the best.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you got to if you want to make a mark on the world. The incredible
There's a reason that the most played, most popular 5th edition module is a light redusting of Ravenloft. The decades-old module, they just added some new stuff to it. It's the same adventure.
That's exactly true. I mean, once you hit that watermark, it's like you can't really do too much better than that without changing the paradigm. And unfortunately, they haven't changed the paradigm. So they go back and keep hitting that watermark, which is fine. I mean, it was a good watermark.
Yeah. Was this role-playing game a little too much for the market, or you didn't have the right connections and marketing capability yet?
It was everything, man. Everything. The stars were not aligned. Looking back at it, it was coming out with influences from original D&D and those first generation role-playing games. And so there's a lot of unnecessary mechanics to it, things that complicated things that didn't need to be there. And that was right at this 2000s kind of where we slid into this, we like faster playing, simpler, streamlined games. To get it to where people would have it in their hands and be able to play it, I was going to need to have a lot more money for travel, a lot more money for publication and trying to get into distribution and all this. It wasn't the climate like it is now. Nowadays, I can play games with people anywhere on the planet, right from my own home, and they can check out the game and see if they like it. There's a lot more conventions locally than what there were back then, within a day's travel, that is. You've got Drive-Through RPG, which just makes it so now anyone can market their game to everybody, let alone the print-on-demand features there and at other places like Lulu and Mixum and all this. Just a different market.
Yeah, and that Great Lakes region that you're in, that's just such a target-rich environment for picking what cons do you want to go to. It's an enviable spot if you like role-playing game cons. Yeah. And so do you go to many of those?
I try to, I always work with the family and be like, okay, here's all the ones I want to go to. What's reasonable, and we kind of pick out throughout the year, what's available. And I'm trying to do kind of like what you were saying, where you rotate a con where, okay, this is my con this year. Next year, I'm going to pick something different. But there's a lot of them that I can get to within a day. So that's not a big deal usually to have one Saturday where I'm at a convention running stuff. Really want to get to Total Con. I've been there virtually several times, but I've never been to the actual physical place. ShireCon, which used to be in your backyard, that's another one I just got to get to. Everybody loves that con so much. Sounds so fun.
So which all cons have you been to, even if it's just one time?
Oh, man.
That you can remember?
It's going to be hard because there's a lot of little ones. Let's go with the big ones. So Gamehole, Gen Con, North Texas on there, HereCon, Con of the Lakes. There's a con out of South Bend, Indiana. Can't remember what it's called. We've been there a couple times. City of First Con. There's SensaCon. There was done Gary Con virtually multiple times, but never been there physically yet. I'm sure I'm leaving some off. One that I've never been to that I should have is probably Origins, because it's just one state over. That's kind of my goal maybe this summer, is to make it there, see what that's about, see how it compares.
Cool. And so each year you wind up actually making it to what, 2, 3 of them?
I'd say somewhere between 4 to 6 is what I try to do.
That's a lot of gaming.
Well, a lot of those are just one day, like pop in on a Saturday and leave that evening, get home at 2 in the morning kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Like I'm staying at a hotel, I would say that's like 3.
Okay. Do you have any hints, tips, tricks, tactics to other folks who go to cons on how you best manage it?
So it just depends if you're going to go as a player, as a presenter, sells, or what have you. But I would say like a good rule of thumb is to not have stuff going on past like 7 o'clock if you can help it, because that's when all the interesting stuff happens off the books. So a lot of times that's where people are going out to, a local restaurant or something and playing a game there, or back at the hotel lobby playing games or whatever. And those tend to be a little more memorable than your actual scheduled con games. Food wise, I try to make it so that I'm only buying one meal a day and the rest of it's like packed snacks, just because I find that stuff adds up very quickly. Hotels bad enough, but you can easily waste another $100 a day if you're buying your food for all 3 meals.
Oh, yeah. At least in North Texas, you usually have a booth as well, don't you? And so for folks who are trying to do some gaming, but also trying to sell some merch, do you have any work-life balance recommendations?
Yeah. One thing I would do, most conventions do a thing where they give you a booth and 2 passes to the convention. And so a really smart thing to do is find someone that wants to go to the convention to play or whatever, and talk to them about, hey, I want to run these games these hours. If you can cover my booth while I'm doing that, then you can be my +1 and we'll go to the convention and share the hotel and all this. That's a really nice way to split some of those costs and have someone to talk to on the drive or whatever.
Heck yeah. Do you have a single best game session memory from any con? And if you can't do single best, maybe 2 that left the biggest impression on you.
So, and this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with the caliber of players that I am fortunate enough to run into. I have yet to have a con game that I've ran that wasn't just so much fun. And again, I'm not saying that because I ran it. I'm saying it because for whatever reason, the games that I'm running attract people who like those genres or those elements and have a lot of fun with them. Now, I will say the one that you were in is probably the worst one I've ever run, just because I was doing some experimental stuff and had nothing to do with you. You were hilarious. It was really fun having you, but like things just weren't working right. The system, I was trying to do some new things with it, and it really fragmented some things and left a lot of dead space. But I'll get that off my chest first and say that was probably the worst. No offense, not you. Totally me. Totally what I was doing.
I was going to say you can go ahead and remove the one I was in because I know I flubbed up there as well. Okay, so we're in it together.
Like poor Ryan playing the titular role of Frankenstein did almost absolutely nothing. Almost everything he did ended up getting edited out of the film in that scenario. I just felt terrible.
You know what? Let's take a second to just outline what game we're talking about here, because the concept I thought is fantastic, and you were play testing it. And you made it clear that this was a play test, so we should calibrate our expectations.
Some slack. Yeah, so Movies Till Dawn is the working title of the game. My design object is to try to create this game where you play actors. That's your real main characters. You're this silly B-movie actor, and the adventures are the movies. And when you go on an adventure, when you're in one of the movies, you're being given a role that interacts with your actor's abilities. If you're a tough guy kind of actor and you're playing, the lead heavy, that all kind of jives. But you could also get written in as the scientist, that could end up being your role. And then you got to have a little fun seeing how those two kind of mix together. But they're all B movies, all these terrible movies. It's sort of a little PvP because you're always trying to one up everybody at the table for the scene that's being shot. You use cards instead of dice, just regular playing cards. You try to do things like physical actions. You try to play clubs to do. When you create dialogue or try to develop the plot, you play hearts to do that. And the highest total on the cards takes the round, and you get paid these little Arnold Schwarzenegger bucks as your fees for acting or whatever, and whoever at the end of the game has the most wins. In the big scheme of things, that's kind of like your XP that you go on and improve your character and try to work your way out to actual movies.
Now, he tried to downplay it a little bit. This game is very PvP because people are trying to steal the spotlight for themselves. And if they can't quite get there on their own, they want to make sure no one else can get there either. And it was fun, except for, unfortunately, for Ryan Howard, because the mechanics could use just a little fine tuning. But I was impressed with the complexity.
You could play diamonds to cancel things out and like call some flub up. So like, too bad the microphone wasn't on. You play diamonds and it takes down their accumulated points. So yeah, he was always getting annihilated off onto the editing room floor.
It was terrible. But the mechanics and the system that you came up with, I found to be very interesting and good at what they're trying to do. So you came up with a system that I hadn't seen before. If you in fact ripped it off from someone else, don't ruin my appreciation of your genius.
I don't think I did. I've never seen anything like it. I'm hoping it's unique, but I don't know. It's always somebody out there that had the same idea. It's just inevitable. So,
and it felt like it was almost ready for prime time. It just needed some more play testing.
Yeah.
That it just needed to be ridden around a little bit longer, but it was a very well polished product. And your player handouts and like your character sheets, those were cool. That was really good, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's exactly like I said. I feel like there's some little tweak, you can just feel it. Like it's kind of like when you're making soup or something or stew that you're like, oh, it just needs that one spice, that one thing, and then it'll all kind of jive.
It's usually cinnamon and brown sugar. Just saying. You throw that in anything, it's going to get
Anything's
better.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So if I did have to pick one that I feel like hit on all cylinders and was absolutely the perfect game that I've ever played as a game master in role playing, when I was pimping my Century's Edge book, I would do a new Gen Con adventure every year. And one year I ran an adventure called A Penny Dreadful for Your Thoughts. And it was a non-campaign scenario. It was meant to be just a one-off sort of scenario. The concept was the players start off not knowing anything about their characters. They kind of come to in the middle of this gala going on, and they're wearing a mask, and they don't have any memories of who they are. During the gala, the person there's a little weirdness to it. There's some things that are obviously not real. The music is coming from this thing that sounds like a calliope, but when the curtain's drawn back, it's this like organic centipede with pipe organs sticking out of it and stuff. Real weird stuff. And then the person leading the gala gets killed right away by a dark cloaked figure. And as it develops, what it is basically they're trapped in this dream world. If you imagine a cube on the inside, all the places they can go to are linked like they would be if you were on the inside of a cube. And then there's a space they can get to that's in the center of the cube. Every time somebody gets hurt, they have this like flashing memory of like a metronome passing in front of their face. And it seems to be taking place in this amusement park with all this weirdness to it. Long story short, what's really going on is they're all characters that went into this mesmer attraction and amusement park, and they've been hypnotized. And now they're sharing this dream space, but one of them ended up having an alternate personality. And when they were hypnotized, the alternate personality came to life and killed the mesmeric guy. And so they're all trapped in this dream space until they can figure that out and do a few things that allow them to escape. But I did a lot of like research on dreams and dream theories and stuff like that. And so I tried to incorporate that. So like every character, you roll at the beginning of the adventure to see who ends up being the person with the alternate personality. And whoever that is, anytime this dark cloaked character appears, all of the characters can see the face except for this one. And that's because in dreams, supposedly the character that represents you in the dream, you can never make out their face. And that's because it's you. You don't want to associate yourself with the guilt of that character. This is probably somewhat bogus parapsychology kind of stuff. But
it's great story building.
Yeah. And so all the characters in their masks represent the opposite of the actual character, and they're trying to put together who they are. So, for example, one of them's like a general from the Civil War, and they're wearing a dove mask. One of them's really old guy, and they're wearing the face of like a baby doll or whatever. And they all have little peculiar you know that word.
Peculiarities.
That one, yes. That get poked at different points in the game. So, like, one of them, their background is that their brother had drowned, kind of almost like It's a Wonderful Life sort of pull on that. There's an atrium with a public pool at it. Again, this is like Victorian era. They get kind of poked at that. Their fear of the water, and they're hearing the sounds of someone drowning and stuff. So there's all this stuff, all this mystery and tension in this one run through at Gen Con. All of it got revealed. All of it happened. And it all got solved at the very last, like in the last 10 minutes of the game. It all just perfectly folded together. Everyone was getting the mystery and understood, oh, this is a dream and this and this and that. It was just glorious. You almost never have your adventures unfold perfectly, and everybody likes 100% in and gets it and loves the turn at the end and all this. Because at the end, once you figure it out, everybody wakes up, and then everyone's like, that dude's the killer. And then you have the real life scenario of them running through the actual amusement park trying to evade being taken alive or whatever. Because there's also these flyers, these newspapers and stuff in Dreamland blowing around that talk about serial killer, loose at amusement park and all this. So it's all just the perfect time I've ever game mastered. It all turned out just like I needed it to.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, sorry. Shoot
no,
machine gun style. Yeah.
No. Don't apologize about telling us about what sounds like an incredible adventure. What I'm saying is that's a lot of layers and complexity and mystery and everything going into that story and how you gamified it. That's impressive, dude.
Well, and that's the hard
Wow.
thing. I mean, when you have a many layered concept like that to pull it off, and that's why I think that's my favorite. Is it was something complex and it played well. I think I ran it 5 times that year, and it played well the other times. But this one time, it just everybody just was at the right moment at the same time, and that aha hit, and it was just like people just clapping after the adventure was over, and it's like yes, all the clues lined up right for them, and the action was there for them, and all that.
Wow, that sounds awesome, dude.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. I almost feel like looking for more questions after that is anticlimactic. Did you ever publish that?
So I would always let those for free online after Gen Con was over. So I never published it for sale, but I released it as a PDF for free off the website. Might be floating in cyberspace out there somewhere. I know I've still got copies of it on my computer, but it's not as complex as it sounds in that there's only 7 spaces. There's the 6 tents that you can go to or locations, and then there's this central train station sort of place that you get to by climbing up a flagpole that's in the parade grounds, and there's like this cigar Indian. It all makes sense in the end, but there's a cigar Indian that's animated at this ticket station selling tickets, and the tickets, I can't remember how it goes, but it's like the tickets are like here, there, nowhere, and somewhere, or something like that, and they'll take you different places depending on what you think when you tear your ticket, that you get different places either in that space or outside that space. Anyhow, yeah, it's
Well,
weird, but it does make sense, and it tends to work itself out pretty well usually when it runs. I mean, there's enough little clues that build up, and then there's things that happen in it that just clearly end up telling the story if the players don't put it together.
what was the name of the module?
It's called A Penny Dreadful for Your Thoughts.
Okay,
It
that
was
was
for
it.
Century's Edge. Are
And
you doing a Google search? Because I haven't searched it for years. I don't know if it's still out there or not.
not at the moment, but that's intriguing. And it sounds like a perfect scenario for a Call of Cthulhu game, a mage game, or any number of other systems. So please make that available either for pay, for free, whatever you want, because there's a lot of potential there for other people to enjoy that. And I would hate for something so intriguing to just sit on your hard drive or disappear into the depths of sketchy PDF download sites online.
Yeah, it's one of those things you would need the right setting for, and the Victorian era seemed kind of right for it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it would play very well as anything that wasn't set in the real world, because a lot of the pieces of it are taken from actual Coney Island and stuff like that. And I don't know that they would set well in like a fantasy setting or sci-fi or what have you. But I don't know. Like I said, there's been part of me that's wanted to go back and redo Century's Edge and strip down the rules to just the bare minimum, because I think it would be a viable game again. But yeah, I definitely could put it out there. Maybe I should post it on my Facebook page, and if somebody wants it, they can take it and see what they want to do with it. Maybe a Savage Worlds conversion or something.
And speaking of role playing, folks, the Savage Worlds games I've been in at cons, that seems to be a pretty solid self-selected group for folks that get into the
Yeah.
game and try to do the firing on all cylinder stuff. Because some of the most memorable sessions I've had at cons have been at Savage World games. First one at GaryCon 2019. And then it was either Con of Champions or GaryCon the next year because of COVID. And they had different parts of the real world scenario. And it was amazing what we were able to do and how the other folks got into it. I never had so much time playing a overweight Tibetan monk that felt saved by the Buddha. I'm Christian, so I'm not even for that, but for the sake of the game, I was good playing it up.
Yeah.
But it was the ending of it was such a sublime, almost religious experience that DM did something right to get that performance out of me. So yeah, if nothing else, I want to see it.
It is interesting that there does seem to be certain systems, or at least this is what I've witnessed. There are certain systems that attract your more avid role player, the person that's going to inhabit that role for that game. Savage Worlds, Star Wars D6 tends to do that. There used to be this game, it's one of my favorites, Hollow Earth Expedition. It was like that. Anyone I ever sat down with at that game table at a convention was just all in.
Vampire, the old World of Darkness games, they really emphasize the social aspect. I think Vampire did that most successfully. Werewolf was too problematic with wanting to be eco-terrorists and tear everything up. So if your first go-to is to do a hellacious amount of aggravated damage to somebody, you don't really worry about talking as much. Mage got to be, what can I come up with to bullshit being able to do this spell? Wraith, unfortunately, I didn't get to play much Wraith.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one either.
But
I know it existed, but it's one that I've never done more than seen the cover of.
but vampire for sure. But some
Well,
of those
Cthulhu
people that
tends
go
to bring
there
in.
are just there to be like in a scene, like especially at a LARP. They just want to be around a group of people. They're not necessarily there to be their characters, but a lot of them are. You're right. Different systems tend to attract different levels of investment by the players. See, there's even more things that you understand that a lot of folks don't. See, just the smartest brain in the RPG hobby. I'm feeling more confident the longer we talk. Are there designers or artists that you particularly love working with? Do you have a Margaret Weiss to your Tracy Hickman?
Artist wise, I've got a collection of artists that I've been kind of using for a while now, and they're all just 100%. Like they give me exactly what I'm looking for, are super good at not necessarily just taking what I say, but understanding what it is in what I'm saying that I'm looking for and deliver on that. So Christopher Tupa, who's a good friend of mine, lives down in Texas. He does a lot of art for me. I've known him since I was a little kid, and then he moved away, and then we kind of reconnected. His pieces always have like this feeling to them that I love. It always brings out whatever emotion I'm trying to convey. He's always able to hit that. Santiago Arbor is a guy that I've used a whole lot, and his pieces, like I use him for this monster book, and he's got this uncanny ability. No matter what kind of, because you're going to have some monsters that are sort of filler, right? That's just, you need like your big rhino monster, right? It's okay, it's a rhino, okay, it's not that exciting, but he, in his art, he'll draw it in such a way that you want it in the game, like right then. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh, that would be the perfect encounter. So that's great.
Rare.
Yeah. As far as like writing and working with folks, everybody I've been able to collaborate with so far has just been amazing. But, obviously Levi, I put on a pedestal above a lot of people just because he really helped mentor me back into doing the publishing thing. And he's done that for a lot of folks. The stuff he comes up with for his publishing company is always just weird off the wall stuff, but it works so well. One of my favorite things, being a big classic monsters fan, is he's done several books that have been kind of themed around that. He did this Wild West mummy one that is just fun stuff.
Good deal. Before we move on to a contentious topic, the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, last question about your RPG ideas and your work. What is the single product that you've worked on? Now, you didn't have to be the whole owner, but just that you've contributed to in some way that you're most proud of.
This is going to change for anybody that's making something. When you have your hands on something, it's always the most exciting thing, and then soon it passes and the next thing comes. But I did this little zine for Dare Luck Club. It's this one here. It's called Trick or Treat. Conceptually, it was going to be an art book, so it takes place during Halloween time. And it's got all these doors that I paid artists to just come up with different doors with different people at the door, and then I was going to write around that. So what it is, it's Halloween night, and your group of kids, this is their last night or last Halloween they're going to get to do it. Their parents have told them, oh, you're getting too old for this. And there's like 5 different plot lines that the game master can either run any one of, or they can throw them all together or a few of them together. And all the houses have at least like some little detail about who's there and what they're about. But then those ones that the artist did doors for have like more expanded background and also talk about how they interrelate into the different plots. And it gets to feeling a lot like, I don't know if you remember the movie Adventures in Babysitting, where it's, just comedy of errors. One thing leads to the other thing, and now you got these people after you and those people after you and this thing. And it really pulled together and did that. I was hoping it would, and it did. And I made this neighborhood map of like an old 80s style suburban neighborhood. I don't know if the camera can get that or not.
I'm seeing it. Your art's really
good. It's pretty
fun.
It's got like a little cemetery just outside the neighborhood, and it's got the big ditch that's behind the neighborhood where all the kids go and play and all this, and a little quickie mart not too far off. So it's got a lot of fun elements. I think it's just the perfect little playground to have that kind of story and to do a little Halloween night game where we're all going to play as kids out trick or treating and let's see what happens.
Love that concept. I definitely got to get into one of your games at North Texas.
I would love to have you, man, because you bring it when you're playing a character, man. You bring it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All right, so possibly the struggle session coming up. When I was coordinating with Lou about when we want to do this, what time, here's some questions I might ask to help prep him, because I send questions to prep questions to my people because I want them to feel comfortable coming into it, that they're not flying by the seat of their pants. But this guy took issue with my assessment of the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh in my recent review. And for about an hour and 20 minutes, I just crap all over this thing as it well deserved. And Lou disagrees with that respectfully so far.
Respect.
All right, Lou, give me the case why Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh does not suck.
Out of the gate, I have to say, Stephen, like everything you said is accurate and true. I can't point by point say, nope, that's not true or that's not true. The one thing I will say, and I feel this is something a lot of people make the comment that you made about the map, about, oh, there's no scale on this map. They make that comment on a lot of maps. And as someone that does their own maps, I will say that there's some cases you look and you go, do they really need a scale? Like when you have a doorway in a square and it's, the same size as a square, that kind of tells you, oh, that must be a 5 foot square, right? Unless you're dealing in some non-familiar area, right? If it's a house that you're looking at and the doors within the square, you got to kind of assume it's a 5 foot square, right? But what would it take to throw a little scale on that? Probably not much. So yeah, I give you that. But again, every other point you made, point on, yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. But I will say this, I have ran that module easily 3 times all the way through, and probably a couple times where, like we played and the night got late and we just quit. It has always performed. Like I've never had a bad session with that module. And I think especially for what it's trying to do and what it is, which is an introductory module. Like this is supposed to be like your first experience within D&D. You're a new character and you're going out to explore this haunted house. I think it gives us what it should. Like it's not like, oh, right off the, right through the front doors, you got monster, 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 trap, trap, trap. But it's a lot of that anticipation of, oh, I'm going to poke around and see what's here. Oh, nothing. Okay, cool. I'm going to poke around and see what's over here. Oh, nothing. Cool. I'm going to poke around and see what's over here. Oh, giant spider. Oh, it performs in that sense. And I think also its sensibilities are very British. Like that's the other thing. It's not, gonzo over the top like we expect here in America, but more like that British sensibility of that stiff upper lip, stern, like normal, and then we get just a little bit of crazy mixed in. I think you're right. Like rules is written, finding that secret passage or whatever. Yeah, it's not going to happen too often. But most game masters, I've never seen someone run a game right out of the book. And that's not to defend writing a book poorly because they're going to change it, but just that, I think it plays better than it reads, I guess is my point.
And you do raise a valid point in that the DM has this module. They want their players to go through it. They'll figure out a way to get their players through it. They'll hand wave some stuff. They'll move some things around. And that's fair. It might be a fun module doing it that way, because a lot of people have said, oh, it's my favorite module of all time. I played this so many times. I loved it. So something did work along the way. My impression was that these folks in the UK, they wanted to show that they were big boy designers, just like the TSR America people were. And yet the haunted house wasn't enough for a whole module. Crap, what else do we do? We'll throw in the ship, and we're not going to do a very good job of connecting the two or making sure one leads to another. And crap, that still doesn't quite get the page count. I'll do 4 or 5 pages of preamble that has nothing to do with the adventure. Okay, I think we got our word and page count all right. So it just seemed half-assed to me. And of course, all the other issues that I brought up. But you are right. A well-motivated DM can make even a very flawed adventure very fun.
And Graham, what is it?
Graham Morris?
Yes. He's an excellent writer. Like he went on to write multiple adventures that I hold as being probably the best of the original D&D line out there. Night's Dark Terror being one that everybody that owns it pretty much agrees. Yeah, it's a work of art.
That's high praise, because there was a lot of good stuff back in the original era, and you're not alone in saying that. No, and having read Night's Dark Terror, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to run it yet. I would love to do that.
There's a lot happening too, so it takes a while to run it. It's not like a one-nighter or whatever.
No, it's a campaign. It is a friggin' campaign that delivers on all kinds of thrills. There's a lot to it. Have you ran Night's Dark Terror?
I played in it.
Oh, yeah, even better.
Yeah.
Did you have a good time? Did you make it through the whole thing?
We made it to the end, and once you get into like the caves with the Eldritch being, I was killed. Died there.
That was going to be my next question is, did you survive that unspeakable thing that everyone's terrified of in the Hidden Valley? Okay. That's appropriate. It's a legit threat. It should take out maybe an entire party.
I think if I remember right, we even had the gun from the Temple of Death. There's a pistol you can get in there. We had played that previously. We had that. We were armed with that. But just like in Call of Cthulhu, it doesn't do you any good against an Eldritch Being. So
that's cool. You got to play in that 2-part series that Zeb Cook did. And those are good reads. You're in a lot of trouble in those adventures, but if you can make it through, it's really cool. And then the cover art for Temple of Death, that's just boss. Since you mentioned it, do you play Dungeons and Dragons? You just don't write for it?
I do. So right now I got a friend that's running us through fifth edition Curse of Strahd, but that play group, we kind of alternate what we do. We've played AD&D and D&D. We tend to favor OSE more than anything in that group just because it seems a little faster playing. It used to be that like all I played was Star Wars D6 Champions and D&D/AD&D. But then I don't know, as I got older, I kind of got burnt out on the fantasy. Even today, I mean, I'll play DCC over any other kind of fantasy, but I don't even enjoy that as much as I do other genres of role playing.
Going along with the Star Wars D6 stuff, my home group, I had been running AD&D second edition because that's what, strangely, the local group in Pensacola was most familiar with. And we had a good time and we were running around in Al-Qadim, but they couldn't keep their stuff together. And I got tired of stopping them from TPKing again and again and again to where when it happened, I said, okay, maybe this ain't the campaign for y'all. Let's do something else. And one of them popped up with the revised edition of West End Games Star Wars D6. And we've been playing that for well over a year. And it's fun.
It is.
My current DM, he ran like a one-off for us. Then I played with you one time. And then we've had this campaign. And it's a cool game, man. Tell me some about your experience with it.
Yeah, so I think I first found out about it like I'd always see it there at Walden's, and where I live. I mean, back then especially, we were kind of in the boondocks, and Walden's books was you would have just weird stuff. Like you'd have a lot of D&D stuff, but then you'd have like maybe a GURPS guide, but not the rule book. You'd have an adventure for Marvel, but not the rule book. Maybe the rule book for something else, but no adventures. And they would always have one of the galaxy guides for aliens, and nobody ever bought the thing. It was there for maybe 15 years, just on the shelf. And so I'd see
I remember this.
And I really, at that point, because I grew up with, in the 70s there where Star Wars was everything. And then it quickly just, you kind of got burnt out on it. And then it went on to other interests and whatnot. So I didn't really at that point have any interest in this, but it was interesting to know it was out there. And then they started publishing a lot of the expanded universe stuff. And I started reading a lot of that. And that really took it to a whole nother level. It was like, oh, now I'm interested in Star Wars again because I never thought about these other characters in the back of the cantina or what was this temple that is at the end of New Hope? What used to be there? What's that about? So that got me excited. And then I decided, well, I'll hunt down and buy I think at that time it was just the second edition version of Star Wars. And that was about that time I was starting college and I was working nights doing stock at a store. And I talked the other stalkers into playing during our lunch. We pushed both our breaks and our lunch together, and that gave us almost an hour that we could sit and play. So every night we'd play a little bit. Just was really fun. And I find that a lot of the adventures for that system, a lot of the early ones especially, are really well written. Now they're story adventures, meaning that you've got a plot. They're pretty good about not being hard railroads. You can normally, there's enough flexibility in how they're laid out that you don't have to do A, B, then C. But they've got really neat little twists and turns built into them, a lot of neat enemies that they've fought through and how to make them interesting and give them some ways of dealing with the characters other than just combat.
I find it's a really easy system to pick up and learn. The wording in the revised edition might be a little unclear sometimes, but grab some D6s, make one of them special. If you roll a 1, well, sucks to be you. If you roll a 6, it's great to be you. Just don't roll a 1 after that, and you're done.
Yeah.
And the difficulties, the bar isn't too high to get over at least basic successes. My problem is not overthinking what the rules are asking me to do. Super easy system. So much you can do with it. It's very flexible. I like it. I just have way too many dark side points, and I got to figure out a way to get rid of those. Because, well, I've got a Padawan now, and apparently I'm tainting him with my dark side points. And I'm not a Sith. I'm just not very well disciplined. And I found this holocron that I probably shouldn't have listened to, but it taught me a hell of a lot of powers in a very short amount of time. And
it's very
the
hard
dark
to get
side
those
is tempting,
force powers. So yeah, any way you can, even from a Sith holocron. Yeah.
So do you have a favorite type of character to play, or did you mostly run it?
I ran it completely for that group that was at work, but then we started playing at a comic shop on Thursday nights, and I started running that, but then there was another guy that showed up that was into Star Wars, And once he learned the rules, he's like, well, I'll co-DM, we'll bounce back and forth. So I got to play quite a bit for a few years there. And I like trying different characters, but I typically try to play characters that aren't combat machines. I like to try to be the person that figures a way through non-combat wise. And we had some just epic moments in that game. And it's built for that kind of cinematic, like, oh, what if we tried this? And okay, roll and see if you get the successes. And it really feeds into that.
Yeah. The only character I've played so far is the same character who is a failed Jedi. The initial group concept was we were all going to play failed Jedi, that when we were little kids when Order 66 hit, and we screwed off to this backwater agricultural planet, and we're all like disc jockeys at the one radio station on the planet. So we were played smooth jizz into the night. And dang you, George Lucas, for using that term. You could have just gone with jazz. Music is a universal language. It could just be jazz, but no, you had to pick jizz. And so I'm a jizz master apparently in this game. And it's been a heck of a lot of fun. And I remember that, speaking of the dramatic moments, we're low level HUDs, not big dice pools, not great in a fight, but there was this bounty hunter that kept following us, trying to catch us, and he had a legit reason to come to get us. And we kept running. We tried changing our appearance, getting fake IDs, this and that. And finally, we were on this cloud planet, and we were going back to our ship, and there he was waiting for us. I told him that, okay, we could do this the easy way or the hard way. You can leave and that'll be the easy way, or the hard way, I'm done with you. And they start shooting. I pull out my lightsaber, spend my force points, and a couple rounds later, I've decapitated him and thrown his head out into the cloud planet. And the other people there are terrified of what they saw. And then one of them ran off to get the police. But by the time they came back, I'd already taken the dude's bounty hunter armor off his body and chucked that into the cloud. And so the police were like, there's no body, there's no crime. But that was a great sense of self-satisfaction of screw you. That just, it was wonderful. And that game let me do it. So Star Wars, it's a fun game. And you've gotten into the literature of the extended universe. I haven't read any of the novels. Are there any particular that were your favorites that I should check out?
I'm a short story kind of guy, so I always appreciated the Tales from series. Like there's a Tales from Mos Eisley, Tales from Jabba's Palace, Tales from the Bounty Hunters, I think's one of them. But they're just short stories that kind of extend characters, what their life was like prior to that scene or just after that scene. Those have always been my favorite. But I mean, all the classics, the Thrawn trilogy and all that, the corporate sector books, those are all very good.
Cool. And now the movies. What do you think about the Star Wars movies and associated products, your cartoons, your TV series, all that stuff? Because a lot of people have a lot of opinions and they like to talk
Yes,
about them a lot. But don't worry, no matter what you say, I'm still going to think of you as a dear, dear friend.
Are you sure about that?
Try me.
Obviously, the original trilogy I love. There was a point in my life where I could watch movies over and over again and still enjoy them. I don't feel that so much anymore. It's really hard for me to continue to watch the same movie, like once a year maybe. But Star Wars, I mean, there was a time in my life where I'd watch that almost monthly. Of the three, I'm one of these guys, and I know there's a bunch of people that say the same thing. I'm just being a copycat or whatever, but I feel like Empire pound for pound hits the best. All the emotion of it, the action of it, everything's just right where I want it to be. I like Jedi. I'm not one of these people that hates on the Ewoks. I found the design of the Ewoks not to be very good. Like they just look too like fake. But I think the concept of this native peoples that are deceptively weak looking, but wind up being able to make a big turn in the action. I like that concept. I think it really plays into the pulp genre that the movies take from to begin with. So the original trilogy, great. Loved it. Super excited for the special edition versions that came out in the theaters. Was excited to get those little extra clips. Nowadays, don't like those extra clips very much. But at the time, I just wanted anything. I was starving for it, Prequels roll around. First one comes out. Me and my friends went to the theater. I did some drama stuff in college and learned to do some theatrical makeup and stuff. So we actually did this guy up like Darth Maul with the prosthetic horns and everything, the Jedi cloak, all this. Went to the theater, saw the movie. I could feel it in my gut that I was super disappointed. But I kept telling myself that, he's going to right the ship. Like all these things that I don't get, midichlorians and why Darth Vader built C-3PO and R2-D2 and all that. It's all going to make sense soon. It all makes sense soon, Never paid off. And I tried to drink the Kool-Aid over and over again. But very quickly after the third movie came out, I was like, nope, those were trash. The new trilogy. People hate it. I don't think they're bad. They're not interesting. They're okay. I think they're better than the prequels, which most people argue with me that they're not. But I feel like the prequels, I felt like were talking to me like I was a really, really tiny toddler. These, I feel like they're talking to me like an adult, but they just don't provide anything new or interesting. People hate what happened with Luke, but I kind of feel like that had to be his arc. He does everything he needs to do as a character by Jedi, and the only thing he can do is live long enough to become the villain again. You know what I mean? That classic die a hero or live long enough to become the bad guy. And I feel like the circumstances were right. The idea that he did this thing that was justifiable in his mind because he saw that Kylo was going to turn everything back into the hands of the Sith or whatever. And I like this idea of him being grumpy and exiling himself. And I love that very Western ending that he has where he projects himself, he dusts off it, and all he's doing is delaying them. He's not, he's made the ultimate sacrifice just to buy them a few more minutes. I felt that was a noble end to his character, even if it kind of throws away some of the other grand things that he and Yoda did in previous movies. That's kind of where I'm at. The cartoons and stuff are here and there. I've never been a big fan of those. I never got into the comic books, and I've never read any of the new novels and stuff because it feels to me like after the prequels, there was a big hard reset button that was hit, and all the stuff that used to be considered canon was all written back over, and I wasn't interested in learning all the new stuff. It's kind of like that with Marvel for me too. Marvel used to be very consistent about their backgrounds and used to, if they had a change, try to make it make sense. And then, once the movies started coming along, they hit the reset, and I've just been out since then. Your thoughts?
You make some good points. And so the original trilogy, it's great. I don't think I have anything to add to yours because that's what made it the phenomenon that it became. Mm-hmm. They were that good. The only thing that I didn't care for in the original trilogy, though, wasn't the Ewoks, though I wish they had been Wookiees, but I could live with them being Ewoks. It's that we blow up the Death Star twice. We can't come up with something else to do besides the thing we did in the first one. That was kind of lazy, in my opinion. They just happened to have a half-complete one sitting around that you didn't know about. Well, that kind of diminishes the first one. And then this is not as cool because it's not unique. Come on, man, try a little bit harder. Say Coruscant's at risk of being blown up and they had to save the day. Something new and interesting. The prequels, I am of the opinion that they have aged better than what I would expected. Now, mind you, the quality level of the prequels were atrocious. They were at the bottom. I felt sorry for Ewan McGregor because he was trying his damnedest to give good performances, and you could tell, but he's surrounded by green screen and nobody else is really trying to do anything. And he was trying to carry it. I respect that. He did a good job, but the dialogue was just so garbage. The CGI did not hold up, which is evidence for my opinion that practical effects will always look better. If you can do them, then CGI is going to be able to pull off because it's a real thing. Your eyes will see it, and they might think it's a little chintzy or whatever, but it's a real object, and your brain will know that. But if it's CGI, your brain...
that uncanny valley where there's just something not right. Yeah.
Yes, and your brain will reject that, and it'll be like, this is fake. If something's fake in the context of having to suspend disbelief in the first place, you're screwed. Because it's just plastic fantastic. Might as well be playing with toys at that point. I was very happy to see Christopher Lee as Count Dooku, and apparently in the novels and the cartoons afterwards, Count Dooku got to be as interesting a character as I had hoped for. So I did like that a lot. You know what? I will add that the actor that portrayed Palpatine, he did a great job as well. I think he brought the goods. And then the third one, Revenge of the Sith, it wasn't a good movie, but the inherent drama of the things happening in the story made it still enjoyable. Like, despite itself, the loss of your wife, the loss of your limbs, the loss of everything, the mass murders going on, the just baked in drama still made it pay off. But then I discovered the Darth Jar Jar theory. And now it all makes so much more sense. Are you familiar with Darth Jar Jar?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. If y'all don't know about that, I will put a link in the description. It all makes more sense now if you see Jar Jar as the orchestrating Sith behind all of this.
There's a guy out there that does a whole bit about all the Star Wars movies are all about the gonk droid. The little power droid that just goes gonk, gonk, gonk. And it's just hilarious. Like all his little connections and why this and why that. I have no idea. It was something I read a long time ago on one of the vlogs or whatever. But yeah, this is fun.
I got to look that one up now. And then when you get to the sequel trilogy, They were pretty, they were expensive, and they were insulting to the audience in way too many ways. Mary Sue characters, I despise them because dramatic value is equal to the amount of challenge that is presented to your protagonist. And if your protagonist never gets beat up, never is almost at the edge of being defeated, maybe does get defeated, but then has to rebuild and come back to equal the challenge, if they never do that, when are you ever going to get any of the conflict that creates the drama? Mary Sue characters effortlessly glide up that way towards perfection. And it doesn't matter that Kylo Ren has this in-baked advantage of midichlorians, and he's been trained by Grandmaster Luke and then Snoke and whoever else, all those years of doing it. He's a very important person in the galaxy. Doesn't matter. All Rey has to do is go. And then she can start whipping his ass all over the place. No, that's cheap and it's bullshit. And then the revelation that she was a Palpatine clone the whole time. Yeah, fuck off. You know, and then every one of the heroes got shat on. So the people that wrote this are those that the same folks that did the original Game of Thrones series, and where they got really, I guess, contemptuous of the audience as the series went on. And then they got into subverting expectations. No, you don't get to do that and then get mad when people don't enjoy your product, because that's what building anticipation and suspense is for, and leaving little clues and foreshadowing is that's going to pay off. But if you do all that and then say, it's this other thing instead, what was all that for that you did before that people got invested in? I'm not saying give people just slop that's the same thing every time, but if you're building up to a promise, maybe deliver on it. Do people like liars? No, they don't. And that's what these creatives have done. So I've made it through the second of the sequel trilogy, and I decided I don't care. I'm checked out. My wife, she's a completionist, so she went and watched the third one, and she said I was right to have done what I did. But the spin-off movies, I think they've gotten a very bad reputation that was not deserved at all.
You're talking about
Solo.
Like Solo. Yeah, Solo definitely. Yeah.
That's such a fun movie. It's not Shakespeare, but it's fun and it's solid, and it gives you more of what you enjoyed about Star Wars. And Rogue One, that's probably my favorite Star Wars movie. And relatedly, Andor is probably my single favorite Star Wars product ever made, because it was just every episode you could cut the tension with like a hair. It was so thick. And the performances from Stellan Skarsgård, oh, he was amazing. Yes. Just the political infighting and the subterfuge going on. Oh, it was just give me more of that. What did you think about the series?
So I have not finished the series, not because I don't want to, but just because limited access to the Disney thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I've seen the first episode at one point. It did seem like it was delivering right back where we were with Rogue One at the opening. And in Rogue One, like you said, I mean, I feel like I got to give the original trilogy as the higher placement than that because of the derivative. But definitely, if I had to choose anything other than the originals to watch, that would be it. And it's because the characters are interesting. The plot's interesting. The tension's there, like you said. It's not just going over ground that's already been covered. It's filling in holes, and everything about it was done right. The effects were done right. Everything, yeah.
And there was real cost exacted from important characters along the way.
Yes.
Like there were consequences to what they were doing, and that adds dramatic value to what you're seeing. And so if you get it all invested in it, you're feeling it too. When I first saw the trailers for it, I thought, it looks boring. But then I actually saw it and I was very impressed. And now I'm sad that we're probably not going to get many other spin-off movies, if any. And well, like Solo, directed by Ron Howard. He knows how to make a good movie. He does. And we're not going to get another one of those because I bought into the internet claptrap about everybody just crapping on it because it's not what they thought they were going to get, and they wouldn't judge it on its own terms. So sorry, Ron Howard.
And I think that's a tough thing, though. But take a main character, write a whole story about a main character that everyone's invested in, everyone has an idea of. That's so dangerous, man. It takes such bravery to do that, and you're never going to get it right because everybody already has in their head their own, idea of what that was, what his life was going to be like or what he would be like as a younger individual. So I like Solo. I don't think it's one of my favorites, but I definitely think it's well worth seeing and much better than anyone ever says it is. Like you're saying in the reviews online and Rotten Tomatoes and all that.
Now you make a good point. Just the temerity to touch such an important character and do something with him that might be a little bit different, but I thought it worked. And I would like to see more stuff like that, say spin-off movies of just Luke going on and do stuff. Because in the novels, Luke does a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's having to figure a bunch of stuff out without a lot to work with. And it's very high risk, high reward. He's got a big old target on him the whole time, but he's got a big heart. He thinks he knows what needs to be done. And that's rich with dramatic potential. I would have loved to seen more of that in the last times we got to see Luke, as opposed to that disheveled, broken man at the end, who all of his sacrifices were basically for nothing. That's awful. No one wants to see their heroes get treated like that. So in other movies, you're clearly a film buff. You're writing role-playing games about it. Tell me, what do you think about movies? What's your relationship to them? You touched on it a little bit earlier. You used to be able to rewatch stuff over and over again. When did your love affair with movies start? I'm very eclectic
in what I like. A lot of old stuff that's super boring to everybody else is the kind of stuff I like. Like I'm really big into like the 30s through about the late 40s era of monster movies and stuff. That really cheesy stuff like House of Frankenstein and all that. There's some pre-code silent stuff I like. And I know this is like, movie watching 101 or whatever, but Buster Keaton's The General is one of my favorite movies of all time. I like stuff, you get into the 70s, 80s horror. Legend of Hell House is a good movie, favorite of mine. A lot of the cheesy stuff in the 80s. The whole Dare Luck Club came from my love of Monster Squad and Goonies, and The Explorers is one of my real big favorites. I don't know, you name it, I probably like it.
So are you mostly a horror guy, or are you all?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, there's a lot of action movies I like. There's dramas that I like. There's this movie that Michael Keaton was in called My Life, about a guy that has cancer and finds out just after finding out that his wife's pregnant. So he spends the next 6 months filming himself. They talk to his son, tell him, what to expect in life and all this. I really like that movie. There's a foreign movie that won some Oscars a while back called Life is Beautiful. And that's one of my all-time favorites. It's goofy, it's weird, but it's about a concentration camp and a father trying to get a son through that mess without it affecting him like it would. So I don't know. I'm all over the place.
Somewhat related in the pathos genre to My Life. I remember when it came out in the theaters, I Am Sam. I went and saw that and went with a chick, and there wasn't a whole lot of people in the theater. Sean Penn, whatever he's like as a person or a political figure, he's a great actor.
Mm-hmm. He disappeared in that role, man.
He went full retard, and
you don't go to hole.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, no, I just said
that's a great joke from Tropic Thunder, but sometimes you have to. He did, and it hit me. And so when I came out of the theater, I was slightly crying, and the chick that was with me didn't understand why I was crying. But then the other guys that were in the theater came out, they were crying too. And there's something in particular movies that will affect men, but women won't understand it at all. There's another one. It made me cry, but my wife passed out because she was bored to tears in it. But my cousin, who's also a guy, recommended it to me, and he cried during it. It was this really experimental, low-budget movie, basically about a dad kind of getting drugged to the dark side in the hell sense of the word, but trying to hold on to his daughter, and it was very moving. What movies make you cry?
Oh, boy. I'm easy to get crying. I'll just admit that right off the bat here. There are things that just get to me, especially like the concept of sacrifice really gets to me. Hacksaw Ridge, that's a really good one, and that grabs my heartstrings really hard. Man, this wasn't in the notes. I wasn't ready for.
Well, tell you what, while you're thinking, I can share some of mine. And this is a fairly recent phenomenon, me crying at movies. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. I don't know. You're still young, so maybe it'll.
We're probably pretty close, man. I'm getting to 50. How about you?
Oh, just turned 44.
Okay, I think I'm older than you then. Okay.
Maybe, if that's how math works. I don't know. I took Common Core math. But strangely enough, this is not quite a flippant example, but some people might think it is. The Dungeons and Dragons movie actually hit me right there at the end.
Okay, hold on. Clarification. The one with the Wayans brothers?
Chris Pine. Honor Amongst Thieves.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. Not the Sweet Pea production one. No, not that one. I might have cried because Jeremy Irons was reduced to doing that. Because here's this award-winning actor who I very much respect, but if you give him a check, he'll show up. And he's an actor. He acts. But the Honor Amongst Thieves one, at the very end, when Chris Pine's character was having to make the decision on who to bring back, his wife that he did all this for, or his friend, and him weighing who will benefit from this versus what's the right thing to do. And then they did the flashback to the happy memories. Oh, I did not expect that to hit me like that, but it friggin' did. And I felt it and I cried. I ain't ashamed of it in the slightest. But another recent one would be Godzilla Minus Zero, because of the cost that these men who are going to go sacrifice their lives, they're willing to do it. War movies, if they're done realistically, they hit me like that because I was in the Army. I got a little PTSD from that. Though my greatest problems were food poisoning and boredom. So I didn't get shot at. The only person in my unit that died while we deployed, he died from a heart attack because he chain smoked, dipped every energy drink and coffee he could get. So when they told me that he died, I mean, he was a good guy, but when they said he had a heart attack, I was like, oh, well, of course that happened. So yeah, the themes of sacrifice, so what you're talking about. And like suffering, because when I'm watching a movie, I try to see it through the eyes of the characters, whether they're sympathetic or not. So I could see the world how that person might see it. And I'll feel for them and they'll get me.
Here's one of the more embarrassing admissions. Have you ever seen Treasure Planet? It's the rewrite of Treasure Island, but Disney. Oh, it's
on my list.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And the scene at the end between the character standing in for Long John Silver and the boy, that gets me, man. I'll start weeping on that one easy.
I got you. So now I make sure if I think a movie might hit me like that, I take some Kleenex with me. Actually, The Northman at the very end when he's like, have you seen The Northman?
I have not seen that one.
Okay. It's good. It's dark, but it's another one of these sacrifices that the director, once it happens, he just piles on everything he can do to provoke a reaction from you. And he got me from it. Again, my wife didn't understand why it hit me, but I got it. Any thoughts about why movies that make us cry don't make women cry?
I don't know.
Because that's supposed to be the stereotype, is that women cry at movies, and it's usually over some relationship breaking apart or something sweet happening, but we're coming at it from a whole different angle.
Yeah. I know that for me, I think most of the time it's touching on either a perceived role that I realize that people are going to dissect this a million ways, and listeners feel free to. You can say, oh, this is culturally put on me. You can say, oh, this is genetically inherent in my thoughts as a double X individual, XY, whatever. I'm sorry, I got that backwards, but you get my point.
I get your point.
Yeah, I'm not I'm not ungendering myself here, but the idea is that there's roles that kind of run in the back of your head about like who you're supposed to be, what you're called to do in this world, for friends, for family, for loved ones. And a lot of times it's when the movie confronts me with a character in that role and the choices they made, either me comparing that to my own choices, I think, or comparing it to people I know that actually made those similar choices for me, or that, for someone else that I know of. I think that's where it hits me. And so, I mean, a lot of the times, not only is it sacrifice, but there's a lot of like father-son stuff in the movies that get to me. And I think that's because my father had a very short life and I respected him a whole lot at the end that I didn't give him when I should have at the beginning. And so that hits.
Well, let's not make each other cry. Do you have any guilty pleasures when it comes to movies? Like movies that you think folks might not know that you would be into? I'll break the ice on that. As a teenage lad, the movie Sabrina with Harrison Ford.
Oh, yeah?
I would make sure everybody else was asleep before I would watch that thing. But I liked it. And at the time, I wasn't much into romantic movies. So for me, it was like something I wasn't supposed to be looking at. Like that's something women watch. But now give me a Jane Austen-based movie, I'll eat it up.
I like a lot of goofy movies that normal people would hate. There's one, it's called The Lost Skeleton of Cadaver. And it's a modern movie that's filmed to look like a 1940s movie. And it's like all the tropes and all the bad acting and all the bad special effects. I could watch it over and over. Well, I used to be able to watch it over and over. Nowadays, I can't do that with anything. I don't have the patience for it. It cracks me up anytime I do see it.
Writing that one down. That sounds like it'd be up my alley.
Skeleton of Cadaver.
You say you lost the patience for watching movies over and over again. What changed between you used to being able to do that and mine more value out of them versus now?
Yeah, to me, everything about movies has changed for me. When I was young, and especially into college, I've always been trying to pursue education as my career. But in college, I had a lot of classes in drama, theater, and also critiquing movies and understanding parts of film and whatnot. And back then, like I would see any movie that came out of the theater. I'd try to own any movie I could and watch it multiple times and memorize the lines and all this. And something just changed. I don't know if it's because when I had kids that things changed and my priorities changed, or if the aesthetic of Hollywood and how it interacts with viewers has changed. But I just find now like everything feels more like a product than a piece of art. And I feel like people put too much of their lives and too much of their energy into holding up these movies and products more than what I feel like they have value worth doing. You know, everyone wants to make a big deal out of every little thing that comes out. And some of it's like, no, that's just doesn't offer anything new. I don't understand what the big brouhaha is.
Yeah, seems like half of the trailers that I see are for another demon nun movie. I don't care.
Yeah.
I like The Omen. I like The Omen too. Omen 3 was okay, but come up with something new. And I don't dig it. Like The Witch, that was different. So people can make interesting new movies. It's just most of them don't.
Yeah.
They go for the rehashed, phoned in bull crap. And you're even getting that like in the Star Wars universe, unfortunately. You got a lot of money, but you don't really have anything to go with it. Like, was it the Acolyte series cost $180 million for a single season? At least it should have been pretty.
Yeah.
It should have been a feast for the eyes, but it wasn't. That's terrible. And I think I know the era you're talking about because it seemed in the early aughts is when Hollywood stopped trying to do anything interesting.
Yes.
Because me and my brother, we would do like what you're talking about. We go to the movies all the time because we had a reasonable expectation that what we were going to see was probably going to be good. It might not be the best ever, but it'd at least be worth our time. And so we would see all kinds of weird art films. And fortunately, we were in Memphis, which has movie theaters that will get everything that comes out, or at least it used to. And we chased that. And then as a college lad, there was this independent movie store called Black Lodge Video in Memphis. And they had a section for blaxploitation. They had umpteen different sections for different types of horror, depending on country of origin, and then on and on and on. And so I just parked myself in a couple of those sections and just went through it. Before I figured out that white noise would help me sleep, I would put on a movie and let that be the white noise to help me get to bed. And it'd be weird stuff like Monster Dog with Alice Cooper. Have you seen that one?
I know about it, but I've never seen it.
It's good. It is a legit good movie. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but I feel a little for you, bro, that you lost out on that because I just recorded a movie review where I talk about one of the things that I look for in a movie. What kind of meaning does it have to offer me? And I'll watch it again and again and again, so long as I can still keep getting new stuff out of it. One that I've probably seen over 20 times now is Hot Tub Time Machine. Believe it or not, that movie is like a tour of the inner life of men if you pay attention to the thing. And it's funny on top of that. It works as a comedy, but then it's got all these layers and so much relatability in it. Yeah. So do you have a favorite director?
Ooh. Oh, man.
For frame of reference, I'll give mine. It's Terry Gilliam.
I'm a huge Terry Gilliam fan.
Yeah.
Like Gilliam's, obviously this one everybody's seen, but Time Bandits is to me the perfect D&D movie. Like everything that happens in a D&D game happens in that movie, and like it would in a game. Obviously, you know, Brazil and some of his other ones are awesome too. But that one particularly is, I own it and watch it at least once a year probably.
And Brazil, that's one you have to be able to look at it on its own merits to get, because despite being a big Terry Gilliam fan, the first time I watched it, I stopped halfway through because I just was not enjoying it. But then a couple weeks passed and I thought, you know, I really trust this director. Maybe I need to fine tune how I'm looking at it. Then watched it, mind blown.
Huh. Because to me, like it's got, you know, it's kind of like what you were just saying as far as Hot Tub Time Machine, where it's got this rhetoric about, you know, commercialism and material goods. It's got this rhetoric about religion. And then it's just got a straight on adventure with exciting moments and interesting characters popping in and out. It's a feast for me. It has everything I want served to me in a meal, the movie.
And unfortunately, it's prophetic, because if you look at modern British society, they're there. They're there.
Another movie like that. Have you ever seen the Idiocracy movie?
Yeah. Yeah. Mike Judge can call it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I used to watch that and laugh at it, and now I watch that and just cry. It's like, why? It used to be comedy. This was not a documentary when I first started watching it, you know?
Now it's like an absurdist horror movie. Oh
Yeah.
God. I haven't watched it in a long time, but now that you say watch it again and see what it comes across as, oh no. Probably right. Did you see his Beavis and Butthead Do America?
Yes. Back when it first came out. So it's been a while, what was that, like 95 or something like that?
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
At the time, yes. I don't know if I would now. At the time, I was the audience for that.
I would say it holds up
Yeah.
because I've watched it recently within the past, say, 3, 4 years. It's still good. And have you seen the newer movie they did, Beavis and Butthead, like Go to Space?
I have not seen that one.
It works. I think they have it locked behind Paramount. Like you have to have a Paramount subscription.
Okay.
But I would recommend like you rent it or something to give it a look see because it brings the force. It's really good. Yeah.
Have to check it out.
So besides Gilliam, do you have a favorite director?
Sam Raimi, never mind. It's not locked out of my mind.
Oh yeah.
Big Sam Raimi fan. Obviously, the whole Evil Dead thing's cool. I like those, but I like his other movies even better. Like Dark Man, I love. A Simple Plan. It's one of my favorite movies of all time as far as suspense goes. Just builds, 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 builds. And it ends in tragedy, which I love it when a movie can land that without it seeming dopey and too simplified.
You know, no one's mentioned him on this show before, but he is one of those unique directors. You know if it's a Sam Raimi movie if you're watching it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to have a certain core of elements. He might express more or less of different ones depending on what you're doing, but you're going to get some comedy. You're going to get something gross. There's going to be some violence. There's going to be some witty dialogue, and something off the wall is going to happen every time. And so that's a good choice. That really is.
He's kind of like Hitchcock, where there's camera hints that it's him too. He's got a very steady way of filming things from one film to the other, where you feel like, okay, these are the shots he likes. This is the way he likes to develop into a scene and all this.
Yeah, he brought that from his time as an indie director, and I'm glad to see that he kept up with it because he's trying to entertain himself while entertaining you in the process. And sometimes apparently he would come up with some really ridiculous demands of his crew to make a shot work, but when it worked, they all understood what he was trying to do. Yeah, Sam Raimi, good call, man.
What are some of your favorite directors?
There you got Terry Gilliam. There is a director that if someone were to direct a biopic of me, of Stephen Clements, well, obviously I'd want them to cast to play me either John Goodman or Chow Yun-Fat because either one of them could do this. They don't look like me, but they could get me on the screen. They could portray me adequately. But I would want Julie Taymor, who is mostly in theater, but you may have seen her direct Anthony Hopkins in Titus, the adaptation of Titus Andronicus, and her Across the Universe. Lush, beautiful movie. She's weird. She'd be able to get me. Yeah. Yeah. So who's directing the life story of Luau Lou?
So I think that the best director to do anything about my life would be probably Christopher Guest, because I think he gets like that subtle, absurd humor. That's kind of par for the course for my life. It would star maybe Will Forte, not that he looks like me, but his level of reaction to things, I think, is close to where I would be at.
Those are good choices and surprising too. But once you mention them, yeah, because Christopher Guest, I mean, yeah, Spinal Tap, Best in Show, a bunch of other movies that I've seen, the mockumentary style. You're the first person on this interview series to come up with that. Oh, good on you. Good on points for originality, my man. I like it. And those are generally enjoyable. There's foibles in the characters. There's things that go wrong, but ultimately things work out well enough. And really, that's all anybody could ask for, right?
And as always, people up to something odd, doing something odd that's not extreme or awe-inspiring, but just some little bit of real life. It's just an odd little bit of real life. And I feel like that's where I'm living.
Yeah, because the role-playing game hobby is a odd little bit of real life. That's where we fit. We're not this big dominant force. Now, cultural influences have come out from it and shaped a lot of things. But the folks that are the hardcore hobbyists, like you, me, anybody watching this probably, and he would probably get you. And he's talented. Good job, man. I like that. Oh, but before we get too far away from talking about movies, I remembered one that made me bawl my eyes out in the theater The King's Man. Have you seen that one with
Not
Ray
seen it. I've heard
Fiennes?
really good things about it though.
Okay, so you got The Kingsman, the first movie, then you got Kingsman Golden Circle. They're amusing. Matthew Vaughn is a distinct flavor of a director. If you don't like his stuff, you won't like any of his stuff. But if you're into his really oddball, lewd, violent, conspiracy, action movies that he makes, he can deliver the goods. And the first two movies, they're more traditional action comedies with some really body horror thrown in, at least in the second one. But The King's Man, the prequel with Ray Fiennes, that is a different pace and tone of movie. And there's a spot about halfway through where if you see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I just busted out crying on the spot. My wife, who's usually much tougher in movies than I am, even she was like, oh, 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 shit. And then the movie is completely different after that. We think very highly of it. I just saw the Rotten Tomatoes and other ratings for it, and I have no idea why it scored so low because we were pretty damn impressed in that movie. So if you want a real hard gut punch that makes you feel bad about life,
And who doesn't? Let's just be honest, who doesn't want to just feel bad about life?
in your espionage action movie, this one's for you. And
all right, it's going on the list.
Yeah. So what is your favorite movie?
It just depends because there's so many different genres, and I don't think I could say like this is the one, this is the only one I need or anything like that. But
Top three, me.
One of my top three is probably Identity with John Cusack in it. It's a horror mystery movie about a group of people that find themselves at a rundown hotel and they start to get murdered off. It's really intriguing. It has just some of the best writing of horror mystery movie that I've ever come across.
We like John Cusack in this house.
Yeah, he delivers. It's one of his best roles of the last decade or so. So that one, I don't know why. It's really goofy and cheesy, but Billy Zane's The Phantom.
Not a bad choice.
It just hits me for some reason. I just really enjoy what they did with that.
Billy Zane, he was hot for so long and he's not anymore. But you know what? If Billy Zane asked me to hang out with him, I would do it. I would do it to this day. So Billy Zane, if you're watching this, just let me know. I will go wherever you're at. We don't have to do anything impressive, and definitely not with some Hollywood.
My theory on that is he, like myself, went bald. Is bald. I mean, I'm not bald, but I'm going bald, and I feel like that hit him, man. I feel like Hollywood just abandoned the dude. You know?
Oh,
he used to have that luscious Hollywood hair, you know, all wavy and thick.
Yeah, man.
Now he just gets villain roles. It seems like.
Man, you know, I don't know which I would prefer to see as the reason he fell off. Is it that which he wouldn't have anything to do about, or was it the Brendan Fraser reason that he got sidelined and that he wouldn't do certain things for certain people and then he got blacklisted? Because they're both very good-looking guys.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but that very well could be. Yeah.
Okay. Oh man, that's tough. All right, so number three.
Number three. I would say probably I'd have to go with something just old and just it just hits me in the feels as far as like this is what movies are about. So I would probably go with the Wolfman. It's my favorite of the classic horror movies. I love Lon Chaney Jr.'s character in that. This guy that's saddled with this problem and he doesn't want to be the villain, but he is the villain. I don't know. It's goofy, but I like it.
I don't think it's goofy. It's just lower budget than what we have now, and the special effects, they're more primitive, but the story is legit. And I've got the box sets of the old Universal horror movies and the Hammer horror movies, and I've watched, I think, all of them, and we'll watch them again at some point because they still deliver. And there's a strength in black and white because the light and the shadow itself creates drama on the screen.
Yeah.
So what about the Wolfman speaks the most to you? The
context of the movie, for those that don't realize, almost all those horror movies have some sort of context to them that they're speaking about, aside from this is, a monster. And the one in that is like a person's return from war is really what it's talking about. It's this idea of the son that was away in Europe and comes back. And now he's got something in him that's feral, that's inhuman, and is a threat to all the things around him. And I think that's an interesting concept, a conflict. And there's just something about the way he portrays that character that you just really feel for him. And I also like, as they take that character into other movies and they get cheesier and cheesier as it goes.
They do.
But, meets Frankenstein, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. In each one, he keeps being brought back. He has this like, really? Can you just leave me dead? Come on.
But he does have that feeling
crucial to the defeat of the other monster. And so, his suffering becomes this necessary part of this attempt to put an end to the evil. And I find that interesting as well.
I didn't even know about that perspective on it, but the moment you said it, I realized that was true. So now I need to rewatch it with that in mind. And for folks out there, if you haven't watched these older movies that we're talking about, do yourself the favor. There's a reason they're classics.
Mm-hmm.
So The Phantom, what's so cool about The Phantom? Because I haven't seen that one.
Oh man. There's a point in time when I started getting into looking at the old serial comics and stuff that like Dark Horse used to do a lot of these reprints of comics that were collected from newspapers, back, I don't even know when. I think these are from the 30s, I want to say. Well, I don't know, so I just shut up on that. But anyhow, The Phantom hits this time in comics where there's this interbleed between superheroes and just pulp heroes. So you got like your Doc Savage character kind of starting to get folded in with your Batman and your Hawkman and stuff like that. So the Phantom's this gun-toting, spandex-clad, horse-riding hero from Africa who's white. But the legend is that he cannot die and that he's been around forever. And he has this ghost ring that's supposed to have the power of immortality in it. But then the real part behind the scenes is that there's been many Phantoms and it's passed down generation to generation, but they can see their ancestors. They have the ability to like see the ghosts of their ancestors. The father that passes on to the son, again, we get into this theme here. This is like sitting on the couch at a psychiatrist's office. I have daddy issues. So
Who doesn't?
So the father's able to, as a ghost, kind of like tell the son advice and stuff like that, and mock him when he's doing bad and makes stupid decisions and all this. But you get all the pulp stuff, airplanes and horseback gun firing and all that jazz, temples, everything, and the movie really captures that as faithfully as it could. It feels a little childish, but as an adult, you get an opportunity to jump back to your childhood and enjoy it as a child.
Yeah, why not? And, some kids' movies are really good and things with that kind of different feeling. Because I remember the era that came out and there was an attempted revival of several of those more pulpy
Shadow and
properties, like The Shadow. That one I have seen. Good movie. And it's okay to enjoy different mindsets, different perspectives. Like The Rocketeer was good, but that's a whole different vibe than a lot of movies are. Maybe I miss some of that variety from modern Hollywood.
That's true. I think that's another reason why I just am not as excited as I used to be. Is it all starting to taste vanilla? It's all starting to feel the same.
Yeah, that's a true story. Huh. I think we're onto something there. Well, that's cool. And Identity, you already got my interest peaked in Identity, and I don't want you
will not be disappointed unless you read ahead of time and learn all the mystery before you see it. Go into it completely blank, watch it. It will pay off 100% at the end.
I'm with you. Good deal. All right. And so another standard question I've got for folks, besides the what's your favorite movie, is what world would you want to live in if not this one? So the scenario is you get shunted out of this reality. However it happens, hot tub, you got too drunk and woke up somewhere, you opened a book and got pulled in, whatever. And you get to pick which specific world that you wind up in. It can be a literary genre, a specific movie, a concept album, if you want to go the musical route, anything that you can think of that I want to be in that world. Which would you pick and why? And bear in mind, you have to deal with all the good parts and the bad parts of that setting.
I think that I would want to be in something by Jules Verne. I'm not sure what. He's got a lot of things that are interesting. Maybe Mysterious Islands, one of my favorites of his. I love that like gritty, pre-technology era of exploration. And I would be the biggest wimp in it. I would be the weenie character that you're praying dies off soon. But to see some of the cool stuff that they see in those adventure novels and to be making it on your own muster, I just like that.
So are you a big fan of the module Isle of Dread?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's a good one.
And I tell you, have you ever played X8 Drums on Fire Mountain?
I've read it. I haven't played it, but I've read it. It's a good one.
I feel like if you just fold both of those into each other, the one has the stronger meta plot, the other one has a stronger setting, but folding those in, it hits everything to me.
That's cool. So Jules Verne. Yeah. All right. So you do have a definite flavor that you like the most because it originated in your first published RPG product. You mentioned it a couple times, the Phantom, and then this. You would want to be a hard fighting, hard drinking, cigar smoking, pulp action hero. Is that
for
what I'm getting
sure.
out of this?
I think so. I've always told my kids, and there's a little bit of a joke in this. I don't seriously mean it fully, but I've always told my kids that when my wife passes away, if she dies first, hopefully it'll be me, but if she dies first, yes, thank you. And my kids are grown up. Let's assume those two things are true. They're all grown up. They've succeeded in life. They have jobs. They have families. They're established. If I were to ever realize that I'm getting dim in the mind or have some incurable disease, I'm just buying a ticket to either like the Congo or the Amazon and just walking in and maybe I'm alive out there somewhere, still able, still up on my feet, and maybe I died the first thing, first snake that bit me. My goal is to just disappear into the unknown. That would be a beautiful ending for Luau Lou, I think.
That's really cool, man. And of course, we're praying that you don't have to do without your wife.
Yeah.
So just viewers at home know that we don't want Lou's wife to
No,
die so he
no.
can go on some adventure. None of us want that. But if reality forced him into this situation, yeah, that got dark real quick. But that's interesting. And, I don't think I'd heard anybody besides me articulate that scenario out loud, because me and my wife, we talk a lot, and mentioned that, if sadly you were to go before me, because hopefully we go at the same time
Yeah.
through whatever means, like say in the
Sex,
Notebook.
right?
That would be great.
Mutual heart attacks during procreation. There we go.
Yes. Yes. Lou, you're just reinforcing that idea I had that you're the smartest guy in the RPG hobby, because you're like pulling thoughts out of my head that I didn't know I had, but they were there. They were there. Are you psychic?
No.
Okay. But anyway, if she were to pass before me, I figure there's a 50-50 shot. Either I'm going to join a monastery and live out my life in Christian contemplation, prayer, whatever, all that stuff. Or the other scenario where she figures I would go just complete man whore, just drinking, drugging, and prostituting my way to an early grave. I would like to think that it would be this one. She has strong evidence for this one. There is, in fact, a third one that I'm not going to share, because then it's premeditation. But wow, what a question that you rose up, that I think says a lot about somebody. And so you crave adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And you do a good job of making adventures for people to go on safely. Seems like you're living your best life.
Thank you.
Well, Lou, I don't think I have any other questions for you. Where can people get in touch with you? Can they find your stuff? Where can they talk to you? Maybe
Sure.
some of them come and pitch some Dare Luck Club adventure module ideas to you.
Yeah, I'm always open to it. And so with the Dare Luck Club, when I publish an adventure, they're what we call triple dog dares. They come in a thicker book like this. It'll be like one setting with 3 adventures nested around it. So like this one's the amusement park, and there's 3 different full adventures that take place in the amusement park. And I always like to try to get somebody else to write at least one, if not 2 of those 3 adventures, so that it feels different. It's not the same guy coming up, with all 3 adventures and feeling somewhat the samey. But
Yeah.
so yeah, if you have ideas and want to do something like that, folks can get a hold of me by if you're on Facebook, I'm Luau Lou on Facebook. Dandyline Games, spelled Dandy Line, Line, all pushed together. Games at gmail.com is the company address. They can get a hold of me there. My stuff's on Drive-Thru RPG. It's on Amazon. Some of it's on Goodman Games, that is. If you're in a con in the Midwest, maybe I'll be there. If you're at North Texas, I'll definitely be there. Gen Con, I'm most of the time there. Look around, and you never know. I might be behind that chair right there.
Oh no, he's behind me. Just look for the Hawaiian shirt and that irrepressible smile. That's probably Luau Lou.
Thanks.
All right, man. Well, we're going to have information and links for all that in the description so people can get in touch with you easier. I've had a great time.
It's been a blast. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm also going to, again, link the other interviews that I've watched of yours that I got so much out of. So, folks, there's plenty of Luau Lou out there. Go get him. All right, y'all. Thanks, Lou.
Thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
I told you that was going to be a fun conversation, didn't I? I was right, wasn't I? I was right. I know I was. And I find that all the conversations that I've listened to where Luau Lou was involved have been enjoyable. So I'm going to put links in the description below to the episode of his show, This Old Dungeon, that he was kind enough to have me on to talk about a very interesting module that you may want to check out for yourself. But I highly suggest you subscribe to his podcast over on Podbean. He puts out an episode a month, and I thoroughly enjoy them. I'm working through the back catalog right now. So I personally started digging into the Dare Luck Club RPG, and I enjoyed that screen adventure that he put out. So I'm going to be looking for more Luau Lou in the future. You might want to check him out for yourself. And so, my dear friends, if you enjoyed this conversation, remember to like, subscribe, and share it around. And share your thoughts on what we talked about in the comments below. I like reading them all, even the kind of schizophrenic ones, and I respond to them all. And so, my dear friends, that's what I got for now. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the best.